Chapter 12. The Adventures of the Fourth Dervish. As he finished speaking, the fourth dervish settled himself comfortably and began, O guides of the right way, listen to me, and judge for yourselves as to the interest of my case. I, whom you see before you, reduced to this wretched and penniless state, was not always so, for I was born the son of the King of China. I was well educated from my earliest years, and every kindness was lavished upon me by all who had care of me. I knew nothing of illness, poverty, or distress, as these things happen in the world of men, for I was brought up in the celestial kingdom almost like a god. I was unaware of the fact that people lived or died in other conditions different to my own, and enjoyed every luxury. But one day, my father died. Before he departed this life, he sent for his brother, younger than himself, and said, Dear brother, I am now on the point of death. I have one thing to ask of you. With my remaining breath, become a father to my dear son, and until such time as he is old enough to reign over these vast dominions, do you sit on the throne in his stead. When he is of the right age, marry him to your daughter, Roshan Akhtar, and I will bless you from heaven for the rest of your days. So saying, he died. Now my uncle did indeed sit upon the throne in my stead until I was about 14 or 15 years old. I looked forward to the day when I should be old enough to marry my beautiful cousin, of whom I had always been very fond, and I waited in perfect happiness for the time I should inherit the rulership of my father's kingdom. I used to often sit and talk with a slave called Mubarak, who had been much beloved of my father, and he told me many things. God be praised, he said. You are now approaching your life's springtime, and soon are to be married to your cousin, as the late king intended. When you are king, may it be granted that you will be a good and great one like your honored father, of happy memory. Mubarak then went to the king and said, Your Majesty, when is the young prince to be married? Would it not be a good idea to have his horoscope cast, so that we may find out the most propitious and auspicious date? You are right, old man, said the king, pretending to be interested. I will find out this very day. But when the vast number of astrologers attached to the court held a session regarding my forthcoming marriage, they were filled with alarm. Sire, they cried to my uncle, this entire year, which is the year of the lion, is most unlucky. Do not, on any account, unite your honored daughter, the Princess Roshan Akhtar, with the prince at the present time. The stars are full of evil and disastrous portents. When shall it be more felicitous for them to marry? Asked my uncle. Well, next year seems much more suitable in every way, they said. The king said to Mubarak, Take the young prince away and see that he attends to his studies for another year. I made my bows to my uncle and went from his presence. Some days after this occasion, I saw my old slave Mubarak with a very downcast look, sitting on a carpet. What is the matter, my dear old friend? I asked. Tell me everything, and I will try to put whatever is wrong right to the best of my ability. Oh, that I should live to see this day, cried the slave. I should never have taken you into the sight of that evil tyrant. My uncle? I said, astonished. My uncle a tyrant? Yes, indeed he is, though you, being of such innocence, cannot see it. All your uncle's noblemen and advisers, seeing you so well grown and intelligent, have the desire to see you upon the throne as soon as is humanly possible. Well, what about it? I said. Am I not born to be king some day? No. You do not understand, my prince. Your uncle never intends that you should rule. Just now he sent for me and gave me orders that somehow, in some secret way, you are to be killed. I could not grasp the truth of this statement for a few seconds, and I could only gaze at him, stupefied. Good heavens, I said. Then I will give him the throne, but let me have my life, for it would be untoward for me to depart from this world without having tasted any of its true wonders. I have this moment thought of a plan, said Mubarak. Have no fear, Prince. Leave it all to me. If it turns out as I think, you will be saved. While there is justice in this world, you will live. He then took me to an apartment where my father, the king, used to sit and contemplate. There was a stool in the middle of the room on a priceless carpet of Turkestan. The old man raised the stool and pulled the carpet away, and under this was a secret door. This we managed to open, and down below I saw some steps. Mubarak signed me to descend. I was at first afraid that I would be forced into some underground cave, but it was not so. Mubarak first stepped down into the darkness and drew me after him, after closing the door behind us. At the foot of the stairs we came to a room, which led to another and yet another. In each room there were huge vases made of gold, hung from the ceiling by strong golden chains. In each vase were treasures such as I, used to all the luxuries of the world since childhood, had never yet seen before. There were pearls and many-faceted diamonds, rubies, emeralds as big as ducks' eggs, aquamarines, lapis lazuli beads, coral, and opals full of fire. I counted 60 vases in the 4 rooms, each one filled with more precious items, gold bricks and silver ingots, with a gem-studded monkey of solid gold on top of each vase. Whatever is the meaning of these monkey figures? I asked. Your late father of happy memory formed a friendship with the king of the Jinn, said Mubarak. And each time he visited the palace of the monarch of the Jinn, he came back with a monkey made of gold and precious stones. I said to him once, Your Majesty, why do you bring back these ugly monkey replicas, when you might have a peerless ruby from Badakhshan, or an emerald from the mines of the Shah instead? Silence, Mubarak, your father said to me. You do not know half of it. Inside each of these monkey images, small as they are, sleeps 1,000 powerful jinn at the command of he who owns them. Now, when I have the 40th monkey from my friend the king of the jinn, they will be under my jurisdiction completely. But in the year that the king died, there were only 39 monkeys here in this treasure house. Now, if you yourself could go on a visit to the king of the jinn, and recollect to him your father's friendship of so many years standing, he may give you the 40th monkey. At least it is worth a try, for just imagine the power you would have if you could marshal so many jinn as your helpers. Oh, Mubarak, I said to him, you are now the only one who will speak the truth to me. Do whatever you think is best for me. I shall go to the shops and look for presents of frankincense and other suitable things for you to take to Malik-i-Sadiq, the king of the jinn, he replied, and took his leave. The following day he went to my wicked uncle and said to him, O doorway of wisdom and fountain of knowledge, I have formed a plan for the destruction of the prince. Tell me at once, I shall be delighted to hear it, said the king. I will take him to the woods, kill and bury him there, and no one will ever be the wiser as to what has happened to him. Excellent, said the king, smiling. It cannot be too soon for me. Do what you will, and bring me the glad news as soon as it is done. Immediately he had left the royal audience chamber, Mubarak came to me and said, Now is the time. We packed a few belongings and my presents to Malik-i-Sadiq wrapped in silken kerchiefs, and set out on foot at dead of night. By dawn we were far from my native city, and taking byways and little-known paths, got clean away from the province. For a long time we trudged on foot, until at last Mubarak said to me, My prince, we have arrived at the dominions of Malik-i-Sadiq. His minions are all about us, in droves. I looked around and stared, but nothing could I see of any jinn. Let me place on your eyes the ointment of Suleiman, said Mubarak, and taking from his pocket a phial containing a surma made from black powder, he touched my eyes with a stick dipped in it. In a trice, I was able to see a vast army of jinn standing all about us, and many others in the air above. Many of them recognized Mubarak, and embraced him and joked with him. They carried us along with them to the tents of Malik-i-Sadiq's encampment. It was a wondrous sight to behold. Servants of different nationalities and degrees stood with folded arms outside each tent, which were filled with high nobles, military commanders, and philosophers. In the midst of these tents was a large pavilion, inside which, on a throne, set with a myriad thousands of precious stones, sat the king of the Jinn. His robe was embroidered with pearls of such luster and size that I blinked as I looked at them. He had a magnificent crown of gold which shone like the sun. I was invited to sit down, and while the king looked at me kindly, Mubarak told my story and added, "The fact is, Your Majesty, that this prince now comes to you for assistance to drive out his father's usurper by invoking the power invested in the 40th monkey, which Your Majesty promised to his late father, your friend. He has nothing except the hope of Your Majesty's protection." "I am grieved at the death of my late friend," said Maliki Sadiq, "and would willingly help his son in any way which might be possible to me. But at the moment I have problems which are troublesome. If the young man can help me in this matter, and not deceive me in any way usual to mortals, then I will be a better friend to him than I ever was even to his late lamented father. If he is successful in what I shall ask, I can then offer him anything that he would wish in the world." I bent my knee and said, "I will do anything which shall be asked of me, and I promise to do it exactly as Your Majesty desires." "You are but a boy yet," warned the king of the Jinn, "and may yet deceive me, human frailties being what they are. You are, after all, made of earth, while we are made of fire." "God will be on my side," I said with conviction. "He will not abandon me." He then took from his pocket an ivory miniature, which was the likeness of a most beautiful lady, such as it had never before been my lot to see. I immediately felt as if my soul was taken out of my body, and I was as weak as a baby. "Now," said the king, "I want you to search until you find this person. Find her and bring her to me. I do not care how long it takes you, even though it may be the rest of your mortal life. Go to her, tell her that I have very great affection for her, and if you will do this thing, you shall have any reward you ask. All I want is the lady of this miniature in my presence. Go, and may you be successful very soon." I took the picture in my hand and looked at it long. It had a most wonderful effect upon me. I felt strong and eager to start the search immediately. It was as if I communicated to that lovely face that I would see her in the flesh, come what may. I took leave of the king, and with Mubarak quitted the dominions of the Jinn. To cut a long story short, for 7 years we wandered from country to country, continent to continent, sea to sea, village to village, and still we did not find the beautiful original of the picture. In each place we found we had only just missed her. People told us, "Yes, she has been here last week," or "No, we have not seen her for a few months," or "Why, we know her face, but we cannot remember when it was that she was here." And so it went on, year after weary year, until at last I reached, with my faithful Mubarak, a great city where they worshipped the one God. "Arms! Arms for the love of Allah!" intoned a blind beggar of Hindustan, tapping his way along the street with a bent stick. I pitied him, and in conformity with custom took out the first coin which my fingers touched. It was gold, and I gave it to him gladly. "1,000 blessings upon you," he cried, as he tasted it with his tongue and knew its worth. "You are a stranger here?" he asked, feeling for my hand and kissing it. "Yes," I said wearily, "in these last 7 years I have travelled many thousands of miles, seeking without any success the lady whom I must find in order to attain my heart's desire. God knows how much longer I shall have to search." "Come with me, sir," said the blind man. "I will give you rest and shelter in my humble home if you will kindly follow." I went in the direction the blind man indicated, and soon we came to a large and somewhat ruined building which had certainly seen better days. Tapping with his stick, the old man led me through a gateway towards the fountain in the centre of a great hall. A soft female voice from behind a pillar called, "How was everything with you today, father?"
"My dearest daughter," said the blind man joyfully, "a gentleman gave me a gold coin, so we will have some food for many a day."
I looked in the direction from which the melodious voice had come, and saw approaching a girl who was the very image of the miniature I had in my pocket. There was not one detail missing from that beautiful portrait which I now knew absolutely by heart. The almond-shaped eyes with long dark lashes, the oval face of ivory tint, the rosy mouth like coral set with pearls. Mubarak supported me as I staggered a little. "What is the matter, my prince?" he whispered. "Are you ill?" No, I murmured. "I am all right. It is nothing wrong with me." It is only that this lady is the one we seek." Then I said in a louder voice, "Oh, you creatures of God, if you will let me stay here with you, I should be much obliged to you, as I have not found anywhere in this strange city where there is a nicer atmosphere. Humble as it may be, have I your permission to stay?"
"Of course, you shall be our guest as long as you need to be," said the old man humbly, "for you have given us such treasure today as we have never possessed since we became poor. But tell us, who are you, and why have you travelled here?"
"I cannot conceal from you that I am the son of the late king of China," I said, "and in my father's treasury was a picture." I did not mention anything about the king of the Jinn, for fear of frightening my hearers, "of a lady so fair that from the first moment I beheld it, I almost lost my wits, and started searching the world, dressed in this pilgrim's garb, to look for her." After I had finished this short explanation, which I thought was quite enough for them, the old beggar gave a deep sigh and said,
"Now you might like to hear the problem besetting my dear daughter here. No man can be married to her or enjoy her."
"Why?" I asked, my eyes still on the beautiful girl. I begged him to tell me all about it, omitting no detail. He began,
"Listen, prince from afar. You shall know everything concerning it. I am from a very celebrated family, who have for many years been well respected and liked in this city. I had a good position at court, as had my father before me. God gave me this daughter, and when she grew to womanhood, it was obvious that she had inherited great beauty and serenity. The prince of the city heard the rumours of her loveliness, and he became, without even seeing her, enamored of her. He neither ate nor drank, and became as thin as a scarecrow for love of her. The king, his father, saw the change in his son with great distress, and sent for me, having discovered about my daughter's power over his son, and at once. He said that my daughter must marry his son, or else the prince would die. I was, though rather against my will, for I did not want my dear daughter to leave my house yet a while, at last convinced that it was a great thing for her to become a princess. In time, she would even be a queen. I was won over, and the marriage plans were made immediately. At an auspicious date, all the nobles were gathered together, and the wedding was duly celebrated. But, in the middle of the night, after the groom had taken the bride away to the gold-brocaded bed hung with Bukhara tapestries, there was a terrible outcry. It came from the bridal chamber, and fearing something dreadful had happened, the guards broke down the locked door. The horror of the scene was too much for those who went inside. The royal bridegroom, soaked in his own blood, was lying on the floor with severed head, while the bride, with foaming lips, lay unconscious beside him, also covered with blood. The king came as soon as he heard the news, and wept when he saw his son so mutilated. Though there were no witnesses as to what could have happened, the king ordered that the bride should have her head cut off. The moment that the king said this, a terrible clamour arose in the palace. Every room was full of sounds of weeping, screaming, and the roaring of wild beasts, until the king ran from the palace into the street. He ordered that the girl should be turned out of the palace, never allowed in sight again on pain of death. The poor girl, not knowing what happened, and robbed of her husband in such a cruel way, was brought secretly back to my house, and from that moment no one in the city would have anything whatever to do with us. I lost my position as a grandee at court, and have ever since to beg my bread daily on the streets in order to live and keep my darling child from starvation. People who had been friends were now my bitterest enemies, spreading all sorts of lies and falsehoods of the most horrible type round the city. When 40 days of mourning were completed, and the king assembled again, the king asked his viziers and emirs, "What is to be done about this?" And they all answered, "Your Majesty, you have suffered a great grief, and we have lost our future king. But there does not seem to be anything which can be done in the circumstances. This clamour seems to be the work of demons, that is all we can say." "I shall put the girl and her father to death," cried the king in his distress. "They are responsible for this terrible thing, I am sure of it." So guards surrounded my house, and soldiers were posted at the front gate and the back. I was called upon to come out with my daughter so that we could be taken to execution. No sooner had the words been spoken by the captain of the guard than showers of sharp stones rained down on the guards, and an arrow hit the captain in the eye. Boiling oil was poured on the heads of the soldiers, and they fled like chaff before the wind. All the time this was happening, the most fiendish sounds were all around, like the roaring of wild beasts and wailing of damned souls in hell. And a dreadful voice came to the ear of the king only, saying clearly, "Do not molest, nor cause to be attacked in any way this girl or her father. Otherwise the same fate which your son suffered shall be yours also. Take this warning, and beware." The king was terrified and gave instruction. "None shall molest these two people. Leave them alone and do them no harm whatever. This is my order." From that day to this we have been safe from molestation, but daily the astrologers and wise men of the king try to find out what it is which protects us, and if it is witchcraft or diabolism or something else. The inhabitants of the city read out special verses from the Quran in order to protect them from us. They think we are accursed of God. All this happened some time ago, and I have often asked my daughter what she saw at the time of the attack which killed her husband. She says to me each time, "I know nothing, except that when my husband wished to take me to bed, the roof seemed to open, and a throne set with thousands of precious stones descended to the floor of our room. Upon the throne was a young man, dressed in the most magnificent robes, and many servants were there also in attendance upon him. The young man came up to me, saying, 'My dearest love, how do you expect ever to escape from me by taking this mortal as a husband?' I noticed that he and all his followers had cloven hooves like goats or deer. My heart seemed to stop as I looked into his eyes, which were black and glittering, as if painted with antimony. I just fainted away, and I do not know what happened after that, until the guards broke down the door and took me out of that room. From that time, we have both lived in this ruined palace. We have never had servants, nor the money to have the place repaired when it began to fall into the state in which you see it. It has been my family home ever since I can remember, and I am unable to leave it, especially since I became blind. Each day I go out begging, and sometimes we get enough to eat in the evening. But it is a hard life, and a bad one for my beautiful daughter. Why, in heaven's name, should she be forced to live like this? I just cannot understand it. This gold which you have so generously given us means that my daughter can at least buy a new dress for herself, and we shall be fed for many days to come. If she were not under the influence of some demon or jinni, I would give her to you, and think myself a happy father. But do not think of her, she is bewitched, and would be better dead." At this the old man began to weep into his beard. But I was not disconcerted by this story, amazing though it was, and begged the old man to let me marry his daughter, as I had been in love with her from the moment that her portrait had been shown to me. However, the old man refused to allow me even to mention my love to his daughter, and again urged me to put the plan out of my head. He as good as suggested that I was completely insane. "Mubarak," I said to my old slave as we sat together that night in one of the rooms given to us by the old man, "whatever am I to do to be here, and to see her whom I love so devotedly, and yet be unable even to mention to her a word of my adoration is like a gall in my mouth. I have tried every way I know to get the old father to consent."
"Do not worry too much, Prince," said Mubarak. "We will think of something. Surely we have not suffered so much in these last 7 years, and travelled all this way to go back without her." So we went to bed, and I tossed and turned like a ship upon the sea in the grip of a tempest. I saw in my dreams nothing but the beautiful girl I loved, and my heart was broken from being parted from her for even the hours of the night. Every day I continued to importune the old man, taking him presents of fruit and sweets or articles of clothing, and pressed my suit as if my very life depended upon it, as indeed I felt it did. A month later, the old beggar fell ill, and I brought him medicines and paid doctors a good sum of money to give him the very best treatment that could be found. I used to dress him myself and feed him with broth or rice, and was like a son to him. One day he said, "Oh, Prince, you are a most truly persistent character. You remind me of the saying that water will wear away a stone. Well, you have worn down my resistance, and today, as I am feeling so much better, I will talk to my daughter. Mind you, I cannot promise anything, as she must only go to you of her own free will. I would never force her to marry anyone whom she did not love. I am grateful to you for getting me the best doctors and medicines which you could buy, and I bless you." "Long life to you, old man," I said. "I hope that I may soon call you father." Again, I spent a most sleepless and uncomfortable night. My head was hot with fever. To my great joy, when I saw the old man next morning, he smiled and nodded with pleasure. "Yes, yes, indeed," he said. "My daughter will have you, and it seems that she loves you as much as you love her. Allah be praised. I give her to you with my blessings. But alas, I fear I cannot protect you from what is to come. Remember, she is of good family, and I am sure she will make you a true and loving wife." After this conversation, the old man grew weaker and weaker, and very soon afterwards died peacefully. Mubarak brought the beautiful daughter to me in a litter, where I was getting things in order at the Sarai for our departure. "Remember," said Mubarak, "do not ever forget. This lady belongs to Malik-i-Sadiq, and you have sworn to take her to him untouched. Do not deceive him. He will destroy you both if you dare to do so." "O friend of my childhood," I cried, "what has the law of the king of the Jinn to do with me here in this place? What is to be will be. What is written is written. Let me now enjoy my beloved. She loves me as much as I love her. Her father told me that just before he died." "Unhappy boy," said the slave with some distress. "Think for an instant before you act in this foolish way. Did Malik-i-Sadiq not warn you, in no uncertain terms, about what to do and what not to do? He is a right royal personage, and if you take her to him as he asked, he may give her to you as a mark of royal favour, should you tell him of the circumstances of your mutual love. But you must take her untouched to him first, as you undertook to do. Recollect also that you have to qualify for the 40th monkey. Have you forgotten the state of affairs with regard to your own throne?" I kept silent. I did not wish to be reminded of all my failings. It was not pleasant to my ears to hear the truth. I began to hate Mubarak, as I never thought I could ever hate another human being, let alone my faithful slave. 2 camels were brought, and we set out across the interminable plain, myself and the princess on one, and the slave Mubarak on the other, with a tent rigged up on each one to keep out the glare of the sun. Our few belongings were tied on the necks of the grumbling, lumbering animals. We went on, and presently approached the land of Malik-i-Sadiq. Soon loud noises were heard, and Mubarak exclaimed, "Good, the army of the Jinn are all around us." He asked them what they meant to do. They replied that they were sent by the king to greet us, and that they were now under the orders of the prince. I thanked them, and we marched night and day with them in attendance. I had respected the beautiful lady in every way, and never laid a finger upon her, and she, in her way, knowing my condition, did not try to tempt me from that narrow path of virtue. One night, I heard her weeping so loudly that I could not help but take her in my arms to comfort her. On seeing us embracing, Mubarak said, "Take care, do not go any further at this point. But I have a plan. There is an ointment which I know of, which if the lady anoints herself with it, may repel the king of the Jinn, and he will be disgusted at being too near to her." I began to feel affectionate once more toward my old slave, and we continued the journey in good heart for many miles. Next day we again heard the noise of the Jinn, this time much louder than before, and knew that we had arrived at our destination. Many presents were given to us when we got down out of the camel tents, and we bathed and dressed in our new clothes. Mubarak rubbed the ointment over the beautiful white body of my beloved, and after she was given some delicious dates, took her to the king of the jinn, Malik-i-Sadiq, in great pomp. When he saw her, the king bowed to me graciously and said, "I am grateful to you, Prince of China, and I will reward you as I promised. The kingdom of your father awaits. You are like a son to me." At that moment, the smell of the ointment came to his nostrils, and he wrinkled up his nose in great disgust. He got up and walked about, rubbing his nose with a silken handkerchief, holding it to his mouth. He called my slave Mubarak and said to him, "Tell me, what is this abominable smell?" And Mubarak answered, "It has not anything to do with me, sire. I cannot understand it." Then Malik-i-Sadiq turned to me and shouted angrily, "So, this is your doing!" And I thought that he was going to have me put to death. Despairing of my life, I snatched my dagger from my sleeve and plunged it into the king's heart. It seemed to have no ill effect on him, and as I watched, fascinated, he assumed the shape of a ball and flew up into the sky. Then, descending like a cannonball, he came down on top of me and knocked me senseless. In fact, so hard did he strike me, that I am surprised I was not shattered into a million pieces. When I opened my eyes, I saw that I was lying out in the open under a pitiless sky, in a wilderness where there seemed to be nothing but thorn and desert, with vultures wheeling overhead. I got up and met one or two travellers who seemed to be terrified of speaking to me, even in reply to my innocent question, "Have you seen Malik-i-Sadiq?" Each one I spoke to thought I was mad, as if they had never in their lives heard the name before. One day, having climbed a mountain after living solely on berries and leaves, I decided to throw myself from the summit. Just as I was about to leap into the void, that same veiled horseman dressed in green, with the sword Zulfikar at his side, appeared to me. He said, "Why close the book of life before you have even read half of it? The days of your unhappiness are now all over. You must read the next chapter. Go quickly to Rome. There, at a certain spot at such and such a place, 3 people who have been through difficulties like yours will meet. Meet them, and see the monarch of that country, and the wishes of all 5 of you will be granted for your future happiness." This is my story. We ought now to have reached the end of our miseries. No sooner had he finished speaking than a eunuch came running to King Azad-Bakht, and, throwing himself on the ground, cried, "O King of the world, you are father again. A light has shone from the harem today, which illuminates the place as if the sun were permanently there. The moon is eclipsed. The Milky Way outshone." The king looked surprised and said, "None of my wives had told me that anyone expected a child." Said the man, "Your Majesty, it is the female slave girl Mahru, who has not been in your Majesty's favour lately. She has borne a son, as beautiful a child as ever there was seen." The king was delighted and asked the 4 dervishes to bless him and the boy. This they did with great joy and said, "Upon your house be peace, and may your greatness live in the hearts of your people forever." "I must go and see the new prince," said Azad-Bakht, "so I ask your leave to go from your enlightened company." Immediately they gave him permission, and his mind was full of thankfulness as he went to the harem. The king then commanded that there should be general rejoicings for 7 days and 7 nights, and he made the poor rich, and the imprisoned were freed. To all the emirs and viziers he gave more land and titles, and to the army he gave more pay, and to the widows new clothes, and to the orphans sums of money for their education. In short, the whole land benefited from his generous thoughtfulness. Peasants were excused from paying taxes, and new public buildings were built. New places of worship were started, and beggars had silver in their pockets. In the houses of both high and low there was rejoicing, and everyone, everywhere, felt himself of some consequence. Suddenly, in the very midst of these rejoicings, there was a sound of loud weeping and wailing from the harem, and the chief nurse came out, tearing her hair and clothes in great distress. "The prince! The new prince!" she screamed. "Gone! Taken away!" "Taken? By whom?" roared the king. "I do not know," she wept. "While I was bathing him in rose water, a cloud descended from the ceiling and found that the prince had carried him away." The king was thunderstruck and could not believe the news. One minute his son was there, and the next minute snatched away. What devilment was this? For 3 days and 3 nights everyone grieved and mourned the little prince. Then something magical happened. From the very ceiling through which he had disappeared, a cradle dropped down on golden chains, hung about with golden ornaments, such as children love, and set with precious stones. In the cradle lay the little prince, as fair as the sun, dressed in beautiful clothes so delicate that they could never have been made by human hand, sucking his thumb in perfect contentment. His mother picked him up with tears streaming down her face, and could not stop sobbing with joy at his recovery. There was a necklace set with 9 gems around his neck, and there was a rattle with golden balls placed by his side. His slippers were of velvet, fringed with freshwater pearls. The coverlet over the child was sewn all over with hundreds of pearls as big as peas. "Oh, Prince, may you live forever!" cried the females in the harem, offering up prayers for his safety and good health. The king, to show his delight, had a new palace built and decorated, and suitably simple for the 4 dervishes to live in, for as long as might be necessary for them. When he could get away from the pressing matters of state which he had to attend to during the day, he would go to their house and take meals with them, or discuss matters of mutual interest far into the night. But on the first Thursday of every month something magical happened in the harem. The same cloud which had descended to take away the little prince came down as before, and, enveloping the baby, took him away. After 2 days had passed, it brought him back again, and his cradle was always filled with toys from different countries, and richly carved items lay beside him in wood or gold or precious stones. Everyone who saw these objects was amazed, so rare and rich were they. When 7 years had passed, the king went to the 4 dervishes and said, "O friends of God, it distresses my mind as to where my son is taken every first Thursday of the month. How can I find out who it is that takes him, and where does he go?" "Then write a letter, O king," said the 4 dervishes, "and place it in his cradle, asking who it may be who entertains him, and for what purpose, and saying that if you could only know, your anxiety would cease." This the king did, and put it in a purse sewn with gold thread in the baby's cradle on the following Thursday. The baby prince, according to custom, vanished as usual. The king was sitting with the dervishes that night, as usual, when a note was dropped onto the carpet at their feet. It was addressed to the king, and he opened it and read it. It was most puzzling to him, and he read it again, this time aloud, to the 4 dervishes. "I am also anxious. It is time that we should meet. All is prepared. Only your seat is vacant." As he finished reading, a large throne descended out of nowhere, and King Azad Bakht, with the 4 dervishes, mounted it. It flew through the air and landed gently at a spot where great edifices rose into the sky like mountain ranges. Someone rubbed the eyes of all 5 with the surma of Suleiman, and in a second they could see hundreds of fairies, dressed in silks of rainbow hues, waiting to receive them, with rose-water sprinklers of silver in their hands. Thousands of fairy-born creatures were standing in serried rows, each in his or own place according to rank, with their arms folded respectfully on their chests. Azad Bakht was taken to an elevated throne as big as a very large bed, set with rarest emeralds, where already sat Malik Shah Bal, the son of Shah Rukh, a beautiful little girl of the fairy race, seated before him, playing with the young Prince Bakhtiar. Chairs and seats, pillows and bolsters were arranged in rows, on which numerous members of the fairy race sat. Malik Shah Bal stood upon seeing Azad Bakht, and descending from his throne, embraced him warmly. Taking him by the hand, he led him to a vacant place beside him. They feasted all day with much jollity, the humans and the fairy throng, until bedtime came and everyone was able to sleep in perfect peace. On the second day, Shah Bal asked Azad Bakht the reason why he had brought the 4 dervishes with him. "These men have, through no fault of their own, undergone many privations and suffered tremendous hardship, and I ask your assistance for them. With your help will each attain his heart's desire." "Willingly I will do all I can," said Malik Shah Bal. "But will you tell me their histories?" Azad Bakht finished the stories of the 4 dervishes. The other inclined his head. "I will, by all the means in my power, assist them. Now I have heard everything," he said. He sat down at his writing desk and wrote letters to all the great jinn who were chiefs in places all over the world. He ordered that they should all come to his presence, and bring with them any humans, whomsoever they might be, that they had concealed or imprisoned or held under restraint in any way. And he warned them that if they so much as deviated from his orders in any way, by one iota, he would know and see that they were duly punished. If they deceived him in any particular, they and their wives and families would be exterminated, and not one vestige of them would remain. Magical beings were then sent in all directions with these written orders of Malik Shah Bal, and the two kings sat down to enjoy each other's company until such time as things would take another turn. "I have always had a great desire to have a son," said Malik Shah Bal, turning to the four dervishes, "and meant, if I ever had a child, either to marry her or him to a member of the human race. For though formed of earth, not like fire as we are, there are many of them of very fair form, and some look just like us, though unfortunately condemned to die after a few years on earth. When my wife was delivered of a girl, I sent in all directions to find out if a prince had been born at the very same time, and to bring him to me. After a short delay, a suitable human was found, and I played with him each time I had him brought to my dominions, until I became excessively fond of him. I would have, in fact, kept him all the time, but my heart went out to his parents should they think he was dead, so I sent him back regularly from whence he had come. But I have it in my mind, when they are of the right age, that my daughter and this young prince, who is now only about 7 or 8 years old, should marry." King Azad Bakht, hearing this, was very pleased, and felt at once at peace about the matter. "At first I was indeed distressed at the disappearance of my son," he said, "but now I have heard your story. You are welcome to have him for a visit as often as you like. My boy is your son. Do with him what you please." Within 10 days, kings of jinn from all quarters of the globe congregated there, while festivities, the like of which had never been before, were held. Firstly, Malik-i-Sadiq was required to produce the human creature he had in his possession, the rosy-cheeked daughter of the poor blind man. Secondly, he ordered the jinni monarch to produce his daughter for the Prince of Nimroz, who had become mad for love of her. But when the brave Bihzad Khan and the daughter of the King of Franks was demanded, all present swore that they knew nothing about them. At long last, when the King of the Sea of Kulzum was asked if he had knowledge of them, he went red in the face and stammered. This was proof of his guilt, and Malik Shah Bal threatened him with dire trouble for himself and his family through eternity if things were not put right. So he came forward and said, "Your Majesty, the circumstances of the case in point were this. When the King of Persia came to the river to meet his son with his new bride, it so happened that I was out hunting with my hawks on that very spot. I looked once upon the fair face of the lady seated on her mare, and I was completely captivated by her looks. It is not often that one of our race falls in love with a human. Indeed, it is far too often the other way about. But this happened to me. The arrow of love entered my heart, and I had to have her. I gave orders to the fairies to bring her to me, together with the beautiful mare of Syria, and it was no sooner said than done. When Bihzad Khan plunged in also to rescue her, I admired his gallantry and bravery so much that I had him seized too. They are both safe and well with me." He sent for them both and brought them before Malik Shah Bal. Then came the case of the daughter of the King of Syria. Inquiries were made, and questions of the severest kind were put to all jinn present, but no trace was found. Malik Shah Bal then asked if any fairy or jinni chief were absent. "Yes, sire," came the answer. "A great devilish jinni named Musalsal Jaddu, who is very haughty and almost uncontrollable, has remained in his castle on the mountains of Kaf. By his powerful magic he has concealed himself deep in that place, and we could not get him out. We are not strong enough to defeat his magical powers." Now, hearing this news, Malik Shah Bal became very angry indeed, and shouted that he would destroy Musalsal Jaddu if it were to take him until the resurrection to do it, and that unless the princess was delivered safe and sound at once, then his fortress should be razed to the ground, and his lands ploughed up and sown with salt. Tremendous numbers of fairy troops were flown to the castle, and the rebel chief was brought before Malik Shah Bal. When asked where the princess was hidden, the haughty Musalsal refused to answer. So he was cut into 1,000 pieces, and his remains scattered to the four winds. The stronghold was bombarded to atoms. Not one stone remained upon another, nor even the shadow of a stone. The land all around the castle was salted, and never more grew even one blade of grass. A great search started in the caves of the mountains of Kaf, and in the very last cave the princess was found, tied to an iron ring by her beautiful long hair. The fairies rescued her, and straightway brought her to Malik Shah Bal. All the prisoners and the 4 dervishes, seeing the justice of the king, praised him to the skies, and there was much happiness among them. Malik Shah Bal then gave orders that the ladies should be sent to the harem to be dressed and made ready for marriage, and the whole place was to be illuminated from top to bottom like a living mountain of light. Then, all being ready, the festivities began. The Prince of China, the 4th dervish, was married to the blind old man of Hindustan's daughter, she who had been in the possession of Malik-i-Sadiq. The Prince of Nimroz was married to the Jinni's daughter. Besad Khan was married to the daughter of the king of Nimroz. The Prince of Ajam, the 3rd dervish, was married to the princess of the Franks. The Prince of Persia, the 2nd dervish, was married to the princess of Basra. The young merchant of Yemen, the 1st dervish, was married to the princess of Damascus, and the Prince Bakhtiar was married to the princess Roshan Akhtar. After the weddings, feasting and dancing went on for 40 days, and everyone enjoyed themselves by day and by night. After the 40 days and nights were past, Malik Shah Bal gave rich presents to each prince, and allowed them all to go back to their own countries in true happiness. And they all rained blessings upon the name and line of Malik Shah Bal, through whose help and favour they had gained at last their heart's desire. Mihsad Khan, the great warrior and the merchant son of Yemen, of their own free will, remained with the king Azad Bakht, and in time the young Yemeni was made head steward to his majesty. Mihsad Khan became the marshal of the army of the fortunate Prince Bakhtiar, and while they lived they were successful in every way. So this book is finished, and I hope whomsoever shall read it shall feel as if he has been strolling through a garden. If there be any mistakes, please pardon them, for has every garden not got its thorns? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, at the beginning and the end.